Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Greetings to you all who are joining us today, and Eid Mubarak to all those celebrating Eid today and tomorrow, inshallah. On behalf of the Shaykh Fadhlalla Haeri Foundation, I welcome you to the second part of an uncommon conversation on the Sufi cosmology of life between Shaykh Fadhlalla Haeri and Dr. Sadiyya Shaikh. Since this is the second part, I will only briefly introduce our speakers. Through his books, talks, podcasts, and poetry, Shaykh Fadhlalla Haeri has been sharing his insights into the deep and unifying wisdom of how to journey through this world of outer form and inner meaning. He has drawn from deep within the aquifers of Islam and the rivers of consciousness to highlight the cartography of humanity's evolution towards the fulfillment of its purpose. Our other Shaykh today is Dr. Sadiyya Shaikh, who is Associate Professor of Religious Studies at the University of Cape Town in South Africa. Her research is situated at the intersection of Islamic studies and gender studies, with a special interest in Sufism. She's always been curious about the relationship between the spiritual and the political, in particular, where they intersect between the ethics of gender and justice. In part one, they discussed broad sweeps through history, the origins of the universe, matter and form, how human consciousness has evolved, the relationship between science and religion, concepts of time, the leavening of humor in the seriousness of religion and spirituality, and deepening the impact of Ramadan. Today's topic, the Sufi Cosmology of Life Part 2, takes up where Part 1 left off, which is to complement the bigger cosmological picture with a more relatable one where we are located in relationship to the bigger cosmology. Dr. Sadiyya, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, over to you. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me? Assalamu alaikum and Eid Mubarak to all of you that are celebrating today, and Eid Mubarak, inshallah. I think of this for me and some of my family that's celebrating today. I think of Eid, this is a specific Eid gift, Sheikhna. When we were little, we used to get little bits of money on Eid Day as children, and we were quite excited. We used to call that our Eidi. So Sheikhna is our Eidi today. So thank you for joining us on this blessed day. And for those of you that are completing your last day of Ramadan, may this be a special gift as you say goodbye to Ramadan. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So for this week, as Muna mentioned, we're going to be moving from the larger macrocosmic picture of humanity to the level of the individual and the personal quest, and possibly the messiness of the everyday work that needs to be done. So Sheikhna, I'd like to pick up on a point that you made last week. And on the one hand, you noted to us that there has been a rise in consciousness, that really human beings over the last 100 years have exhibited in our social lives and just in our consciousness a rise in consciousness. But if we look around at the political world, for example, at the moment, it seems to me increasingly also that what we see is the opposite. On the one hand, I think you quite rightly pointed out last week, that the rise in consciousness is clear to us if we look at how murder, for example, is now a crime, that we have an awareness of human rights, that we have an increased understanding of gender egalitarianism, etc. And so all of those indeed, I think at a public level, mark our evolution, our kind of heightened consciousness. But the political world seems to be, in some sense, in stark tension to that. I am not sure, perhaps this has happened before, but if you look at the political stages of the world, you have the rise of political leaders that seem to be, in some sense, an embodiment of the worst vices that we could possibly have. We see unashamed kinds of ways in which political leaders, they have no shame in terms of displaying their vices. And they democratically elected. If you look at India and we look at the US, we look at the rise of right-wing politicians in South America and in Europe. So on the one hand, yes, indeed, we've had these these changes in consciousness. And on the other hand, it seems that on the political stage, there's a massive nafs al-ammara at a collective level running, running riot. And so, Sheikh, now perhaps you can comment a little bit on this tension between, on the one hand, the rise of consciousness broadly, and the reality that on the political stage and in many parts of the world, we actually see a really profoundly bereft, a very deprived state, human state, that seems to be on display. If Sheikh can possibly just comment a little bit on those tensions.
It's true what you say. It's also true that consciousness has been evolving throughout creation, from the Big Bang, from the moment of creation. Both are true. Consciousness was awareness of self, self-awareness, wujud, acknowledgement that we are searching for something that is the real thing, and from it everything else emerges. And this has moved on so over many, many billions of years, to the point where in the last 2,000-3,000 years, when it became more and more among settled people on land and so-called emerging, fairly populated towns and cities and civilization, we then began to learn how to manage what was earlier on fear of extinction, because there were very few people roaming around, to that crowd management, to that of bringing everybody in to voice their also whatever is in their mind or their heart. Things have moved very rapidly, very fast. So what you say is true, that we are witnessing quite a lot of arrogance, quite a lot of deceitfulness, quite a lot of lies, and on and on. But it's because we have moved from the collective, which was necessary for survival 200-300 years ago, to much more of the individual. So we've moved from the horizontal, what the neighbors say, what the others say, opinion, views, you don't want to have a bad reputation, you may be ostracized, and so on, and you will die if you're ostracized. To that being me, pretending to be also, there is a bit of a you as well. So we are in that process. And it is very dark, very also, as you say, brings about much injustice, much abusiveness, and all of that. But I think it will pass. It will pass in different ways also. Failure of these systems, liberal democracy is almost on its last leg, and on and on. It's because individuals have not taken responsibility. Why should they take responsibility? They want to have fun. They want to have ease. They want to flaunt power. They want to pretend to be demigods. So why should they then limit and be restricted and have a Ramadan every day or every other day? Nobody wants that. It's because the nafs amaratun bisu, the nafs, the lower self, wants to mimic the soul, which is boundless, which is not definable. It is beyond the limitation of any creation or destruction. So we are in that process. It is evolving, but for you and I, with a limited lifetime, we think it's very slow. Also true. But measure it in billions of years, you find it's very, very fast. We are tolerant of others. There isn't so much individual, personal murders and mayhem. The population increase is a big factor. So we have become more and more cognizant of overpopulation and over-abuse and effect of the environment on other lives also. It is true what you say, but it's also true what I've said. The ultimate destiny is the prevalence of the light itself from every heart, wherever it appears. That cosmic light, if you look at the story of the allegorical story of Adam, which we have beautiful also different facets of it, it's unknown. The same thing as the so-called Big Bang, it's also unknown. It's that something had occurred which was very unusual that falls upon itself. So the soul or the spirit of the human being has within it a reminder, has within it all of these other beams of energies or lights, such as feeling of guilt, remorse, suicidal, and all of these. So it will be self-correcting. But you just have to be patient for a few million years more, and that's it. And you find what is few million between friends. It began timeless, it is timeless, but we are now in a tiny little capsule, which we call time and my time, and time is so precious, time is not replaceable, and. But eventually, when you are truly lose your nafs or your ego or your image of yourself, you find all what there is time, and all what you have is time. So you have no rush, you have no passion. That's all what it is. Time is timeless. So we are going through a very dark period. It's part of the rise. Within the rise of the arc of consciousness, there are lots of little circles that go down and up and down and up. And we are through a very downward circle of lies in a collective, in a communal, in a political way. We've ended up being led by people who don't know what leadership is. How can you be led by someone who hadn't led himself? And find me any of the politicians who had led himself or herself. If they have, they don't want to lead because they know it's impossible. Every one of them wants to be a god or a king or whatever and the ruler, and his voice must prevail. I am the only one. I only know the truth. Everybody thinks that. So it's impossible. So that's why I consider myself one of the most absolutely favored beings for not having any leadership role whatsoever, not even upon myself. That is being led by its creator.
Thank you, Shaykh. Before I go to the questions of the individual, I want to just follow up a little bit on what you've said now. So, Shaykh, what is the essential nature of our responsibilities to other human beings? Do we have a role and a responsibility for the collective good? What is not our responsibility in this regard? And what helps us to distinguish between the two? Is our spiritual work our own individual work? Do we need to first rein in ourselves before we can do anything on the outer? Is Sufism something that is politically quietist? Is it something, or as other thinkers have argued for, an engaged Sufism that is active in the work of social justice? So what is the role of a spiritually vibrant human being at the level of the social and the political? And how are we to respond to social injustice?
My outer commitment or duty or responsibility is the other side of the coin of my inner responsibility towards myself. Because after all, I count more than anything else. So my responsibility towards myself is to save myself from myself by the light of my ruh or my spirit. So it's concomitant. My serving others, society, community, social justice, standing against all of the other injustices and violences and all of that is part of my personal need to stop me being unjust to myself by deviating from the truth that there is no self. There is only a soul. The self is only its dark image. So they are together. My concern, my duty towards others is parallel to my duty to myself. My duty to myself is to be honest by accepting the truth that I have nothing of my own. I didn't own anything, I didn't earn anything. And when I leave my body behind also, there is no commitment to any physical entity. It's honesty. Stop time. There was nothing before. And mysteriously emerged this universe. Same thing as the conception of the so-called I in the womb. There was nothing before. The environment was ready, so out of two emerged the one. And this one now is looking to the meaning as to where is my soulmate? How can I be content? Where is the mirror I can look and discover the real light of my own self? So they are inseparable. The outer and the inner are ever connected. It's because of the mediation of the mind, I give one of them as the emphasizing the outer, the other one is emphasizing the inner. And they are seamlessly connected. I cannot ignore one on account of the other. But there is a priority if I have not been watchful enough as to my own intentions, actions, reactions, and all of that, then I need to give a bit more emphasis to awareness about what goes on in my little head and my intention and my orientation. And I know through experience that the more I pay attention to the so-called I, the more I'll be disappointed. And I am programmed as a soul not to have any disappointment, only ease and bliss and flow and light upon light. So I don't like to be disappointed. I don't like to be angered. I don't like to be reprimanded. So that's why many of us take on to camouflaging and lying and hiding, because we only want the perfect truth, which is ever perfectly present. So this is how the story is. So it's a spectrum. One end of it is outer, 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 and the other end of it is inner, 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 inner. And I'm in between. Some aspect of me is inner, inner, inner. It's lost in the unfathomable depth of truth. And the other one is outer, outer. What did you do? You pulled that door down. You're accountable. You must, you can't do that. So why did you do it? What goodness comes of it? So eventually, most intelligent people end up trying to take a cause, whether it is other people or a community or a society or children or women or whatever, or mothers, in order to serve, meaning reduce suffering. Why? Because if you are suffering, you want to level it out, even it out. If you have hunger, you can't enter into the zone of absolute calmness and ease. You have now a physical, outer, visible duty to reduce the hunger or illness. You have to attend to that, focus on that. You can't say, I'm meditating. Oh, you're hallucinating. It's not meditation. You're in a fever. So this is, you have to be correct, address the situation of your conscience and consciousness where it is. You're rushing to save some child from being attacked, whatever. So you do that, that's fine. Helping, because there is no other. The child is you in a childish form, in a different culture. There's only you. There's only the light in your own heart, in truth. But it projects, it reflects, it shines upon other things. So attend to that. It's only you. Somebody else is you, same thing as you. And that's why the Quran says, not until you review, you consider your enemy as a dear friend. Because he is also another being wanting to discover the nature of the light in his or her own heart. It's the same. But a different position, different time, different place, so they become enemies. That's it.
Thank you, Shaykh. Actually, that I am sitting with this incredibly beautiful gem that you've just articulated. This notion of there is no, if your ego or if your sense of ego gets diminished, then there is no separation between you and the other. And so you serve without that kind of selfish ego. So Bismillah, that's a profound connection between the personal and the social, between the individual and the political. Thank you, Sheikhna. So Sheikh, you've now and on many other occasions spoken about human nature as this barzakhi. We're all these in-between creatures. We're barzakhi creatures between the shadows on one hand, where we negotiate the complexity and the dispersion of our world, and we both constituted through those shadows and move between them. And we are simultaneously, as you remind us, tirelessly, that we are actually of the one, from the one, we're returning to the one constantly, that we are also higher consciousness. And Surah Al-Tin, لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ ثُمَّ رَدَدْنَاهُ أَسْفَلَ سَافِلِينَ. And we have created human beings in the best of statures, or the most beautiful of statures. And then we have reduced him or her to the lowest of the low. And so this vacillation between duality and oneness, between the higher and the lower, is something that we all are located within, being human in this world. And, please tell us, give us some advice on how it is that we would increase a higher calibration. You've spoken numerous times that we need to, cultivate our methods of calibration to the higher. Could you describe the process of human spiritual maturation or spiritual evolution, what are the different stages that human beings must pass through in their journey towards awakening towards the higher? What is awakening or enlightenment?
It is all about that unfathomable cosmic light, the divine light. And that's what the ruh or the spirit or the soul or within us is that. So you, I, anything that is alive has been touched and maintained in that touchness as long as they're alive by the source of life, which is boundless, timeless, and doesn't belong to any confinement of space. That is how you are, anything alive is. And unless you are respectful to life, also we will be discarded. That's why we are going collectively through a very dangerous zone in life. We've been very abusive to other livings. We have taken it upon us to condemn all other creatures that they don't have the same feeling, they don't have the same fear, they don't feel the same pain, and so on and so kill, whatever, do whatever, abuse, and whether it is living creature, animal, or a plant, or a tree, they all are sentient. Now, having said that, the issue of darkness and life is that if you look at the sun, you can't see it with the naked eye. Actually, you'll hurt. You'll also can damage your eyes and your sensitive, incredibly, intricate connectedness of the mechanism of vision and seeing. So you you try to shield it. So the lower self or the ego or the dark side of me is necessary for me to begin to inquire and begin to touch, eventually thou taste the higher me. So it starts with an idea that you are not this, you're a child, so therefore all what you want is to me, and play and so on. But a time will come that you find there will be a new taste arising in you that by helping, serving, giving to others gives you more even joy and pleasure. The mother knows that, with her willing to even die for the baby. So that is a very high, if you like, aspect of our spectrum of emotions and feelings and so on. So it's the higher end of our mental capacity. And then it reaches to such a fine point that it is lost into the soul, into another zone of lights. So each one of us, again, is a spectrum. One end of it is divine light, beyond any measure of understanding. Mind is only a creation to mediate physical, chemical, biological, physiological entities. So the mind is in between. I need a mind in order for me to maintain earthly interaction and life. But I don't need the mind when I have no longer in my body or need the binding. So I'm liberated from these connecting vehicles or languages. It's not needed anymore. So I am only a soul. So my purpose is to practice being the soul. I can't attain it. I'm alive because of it. All what I can do is to do Ramadan. Restrict. Don't be too attached or concerned about the so-called you, the images, the illusions of identity, of separation, of all of the other things. They are there as shadows. You can't deny the fact that I like to be independent. But what does independence mean? I'm dependent on air, dependent on water, but I don't want to be independent on someone who is as unreliable as everyone else. It's a very insecure situation. I'm seeking security. What does that mean? I'm seeking my soul, ever secure. It knows its law. It's ever connected with the infinite. So whatever I think, desire, want, or avoid actually is a reflection of the drive towards being at one with the one of soul within me. It's already done. I just have to be honest and look at it first with sight and then with insight. Farja al-basar. And you find there's no fault. All of it is there. We all want the same thing, and it's not the thing. And it is certainty that you are a boundless divine soul. We are all the same. That's why we have to respect each other. We have to have reverence for other people. Even though they are misguided, but that is what they are driving for. They want to have utter certainty that the real he or she is not subject to comings and going or death. And therefore, it is the body and the mind that's subject to death. And that's, we try to minimize the fear, the anxiety, and the concern by being concerned with others, serve less fortunate ones, help nature, maintain balance, don't disturb the balance. It took the earth many, many hundreds of millions of years for it to be in balance. Otherwise, the temperature would not have been possible. And now, within 2-3 decades, we have disturbed the balance so heavily that hardly anything is alive except ideas in our mind. And all of that happened through a tiny little entry into the unknown of being able to release the energy confined in matter. 1 or 2 kilos of atomic reaction produces the millions and millions and millions of destructions that we. It's the release of energy of matter into energy. So that's why we have been limited. In a way, when the angels objected to the creation of Adam, and the whole story is fantastic of the Adamic cosmology. And then the voice of truth said, no, but there will be others who will know the attributes. What are the attributes? They bring about modesty, contentment, goodness, joyfulness, generosity, all within the web of the divine attributes. That's all. So we are here caught in that web. We need to recognize the strands of that web and accept them and be at ease. In the meantime, also being interactive with the immediate things around us. Improve on it if you can. Along the path of evolution, to know the one, only one. That is the direction of the future. Not haphazard as I think. Otherwise, we mess the earth and we now try to get to other planets and mess them up also.
Thank you. This is such a beautiful description of being in a network of divine attributes. I think that's if I want to just connect that with something else that Shaykh has said previously. He once noted that in the drift of existence, everything is on the move, and that human consciousness has evolved and is constantly, even as we speak, on the move. And in your talk, in a beautiful conversation with Adnan, with Dr. Adnan yesterday, he reminded us that the heart, qalb, comes from the word to be turning. And so this is a question of our hearts never being rigid, constantly moving, being alert and being receptive to the ayat, to be able to see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's face in every direction, and this freedom to turn and to move. Shaykhna, what does it mean right now for us to completely apprehend what a malleable, soft heart and a consciousness and an awareness that is on the move? What does that mean in real terms for us right now in each of our lives?
Water is one of the 4 principles that brings about life, and the softness. It's to soften things. So a soft heart connects the infinite, the absolute, the soul or the spirit which resides in it, with the outer mind and rigidity and the bones and the calcium and the so-called I who wants to be obeyed and followed at all times. Rigidity, frigidity. So it's in between. The heart is the metaphoric home of the soul. It also resonates with the physical heart, where that constant vibration of the pumping of the water of human life, which is blood. So I am essentially a constant, timeless, undefinable spirit or soul that is cosmic, on a journey by touching, if you like, the earth for a while. So that soul, that amazing package of energy or lights, had come into this being who has the faculties that we know about, the most complex systems of amazing millions of thousands of functions and connectedness, and the intricate balances between all of the organs and all of the other neurons, billions of them, and all of them. And the identity of I. So I am in between. I can't deny the identity. I am aware of the I, but this I constantly changes. The I of 10 years ago is not the same as I now. But I still say I. Same thing as the moment. He was at that moment. It was at that instant. But the instant moves. It's for that reason we enjoy more direct communication in real time. But we have ended up virtual, so there is only virtual time left now. So, or virtual communication. Yeah. So I am on one side, which is the everlasting side, is a soul or a spirit or a divine package of lights, which encompasses maybe hundreds of different strands of lights and energies. And then on the other hand, when there are also all the other solids and liquids and the organs and so on, is I am this. I am now in charge of this. So therefore I object if you prick me with a pin. Say, no, you can't do that. This is me. It hurts. Meaning, I want to preserve it. Meaning, it's imitating its origin. Meaning, its mother, its reality, its truth is eternal. So the so-called I don't want to be hurt. The soul is not hurt. It's only the nafs. It's only its shadow. So thank God for its shadow that would lead me to it, because it is so immense that it cannot be accepted by anything. That's why the Quran says this truth could only be accepted by an ignorant and wrongdoing human being. That's it. Zaluman jahula. So how can I, you, he, she accept the truth that is eternal, that's beyond the cosmos? That is incredibly impossible. Everything emanates from it, by it, returns to it. And then I say, or I accept it. How is it not? So I had to be in a coma to have accepted this light of lights of lights. Allahu Nur Samawati. So once I understand the map of the so-called who am I, then I realize, I say, look here, today I've had a difficult time, and so on. So don't ask me too many things because I'm going to be in bad temper. Meaning, I'm trying to preserve the so-called identity or entity, so-called. So, and so on and so on. So there are moods that change. There are minds that cast shadows. And if all of a sudden you have 10 people come and tell you what a dreadful person you are, you certainly start being depressed. The reverse is also true. If 10 other idiots come and tell you how wonderful you are, you really helped us a lot. You're saving you. Oh, how wonderful. So then again, once it goes into your head, the rahmah is such that you stumble and crumble. So each one of us is hanging between the sublime and the ridiculous. It's absurd. Every human being thinks, I am the best. Everything I say is true. Well, you may have meant it. Therefore, there is a touch of truth in it. But it's not true. True is everlasting. That is a preserve of the divine reality that encompasses all. But once it touches anything, then there is also the downside of it, the other side of the coin, the dark side of it. So we have to understand the map. Iqra, we have to read it and flow with it also. Say, look here, today I don't feel very well, so I'm not up to, coming to celebrate. Everybody comes saying, Happy Eid. I'm tired of having a silly smile on my face. It's not real. So we have to be honest. You say, not today. I remember I met someone many years ago in Europe. He was from India. I was the ambassador there. And he refused to go and present whatever credentials. He said, my soul hasn't arrived yet. So I have to wait until my soul, there is a jet lag. So to be honest, say, look, I can't do it today. I can't. I have to quieten the animal, quieten the mind, neutralize it, restrict it, but give it enough fodder, keep a few days of silence, go into a silence retreat, and then you can connect really with the light that is giving you life. Honesty, we have to be honest. But nowadays, no, everything is according to the clock. So every morning, that's why there is so much inefficiency. I guess anything between 30 to 50% of the work in the corporate world is inefficient. Actually, it produces also more, if you like, downside than other problems. They have to go and apologize. So much of this miserable ego and so on comes into the way. So that's why I think with the latest experiences the world has had for 2 months, much efficiency is increased because there wasn't all the time people coming in and out and so on. You're in a lockdown, and people are working much more and more efficient and also much more tired because they are not a distraction in between of social interaction. You say, social, how are you? And all that gossip. So they are frustrated. There is a lot of mental, if you like, needs nowadays to return. But humanity is there. That part of it is to do with physical aware outside. And it's entirely based on the well-beingness of your own inner heart. If it is pure, then the light shines upon you. Otherwise, we end up in crisis after crisis. All of human crisis is spiritual crisis, is that your spirit is not alive in you. You're saying things which are not genuine, which are not real, which are hypocritical, and you either regret it or you feel blame anyway. So that's who we are. You are a divine entity in transit on earth. You are celestial, transiting through the terrestrial realm, mediated by hopefully a healthy, clean, clear mind and a clear memory also. Not suffering from all the stupid things you have experienced 40, 50 years ago. It's boring. It's not interesting. It's gone. It's not there. Only the now is there. And the now is eternal.
Can you hear me? Muna, can you hear me? Okay, Bismillah.
I think you froze for a moment, but carry on.
Okay, so Sheikhna, what is the value of individuality? What gifts does it bring? What parts of the individual self must we be valued, must be cherished as unique gifts? We have such a strong, long language of jihadun nafs, so this very kind of military, actually, metaphor, because we often mistranslate jihad in this military manner. It really is the struggle with the self, which I think is a far more gentle way of putting it. But there's been some really interesting conversations of late about how to think about the relation with the nafs, not as this thing to be overcome and dominated and dissolved in this very authoritarian manner, but how do you mold and change and lovingly paint the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala onto the heart, onto the self? How do you elevate without crushing? A number of people have actually made some really interesting observations of shifting this way in which we even imagine our relationship with the nafs. And I thought yesterday there was a very beautiful phrase that you used, Sheikhna, which you said, and I want to quote you, to simultaneously befriend the nafs and transcend the nafs. I thought that was a really beautifully holding metaphor of our relationship with the nafs, which I really enjoyed. And on that, in that kind of train, what I want to ask you is that on the one hand, we all have to dissolve the ego self, but on the other hand, what beauty, what gifts, each one of us are unique, and we are unique manifestation of the hidden treasure. We've been created in this very specific mold. We are both, each of us, completely connected with each other, and simultaneously we are distinctive. And so what does the distinctiveness hold? What spiritual value does that hold? How do we embrace our individuality without it becoming an ego identity? How do we hold on to the very special, unique nature that we've been given and nurture the highest and the most beautiful while not diminishing that distinctiveness? So perhaps if Shaykh can reflect on that, that would be incredibly valuable.
There is no other way other than doing it. So there's no point in discussing it. The Quran uses the word nafs also in combining the real self or the soul, which is eternal, and the passing one, which is the shadow or the ego or the lower self. So the lower self and the higher self are inseparable. The only difference is that as we evolve also in this world, in our consciousness, from babyhood, childhood, to adulthood and awakening, it begins first simple awareness, and then taste and smells and all the other senses, and then the likes and the dislikes, and you develop your own childlike personality. This child doesn't like this way. So, and you move on and on until you find really all of these were outer covers, which you discard, the same way as a snake discards so many skins. We too also, we discard so much of our skin all the time, but it's not in one go, it's perpetual, constant. So it moves on from developing its own personality, its own identity, its own separation, its own, concern, and all of that, slowly by slowly towards who is the real you, who made all of those sentiments, all those awarenesses, all those, if you like, values of good and bad, all of the waham, all of the khayals. Where is that from? You find it's only from your own soul. So this individuality issue is like you are given a kingdom. And there are so many wonderful metaphors you have, like the different armies, you get at so many different levels. You have a fighting force. You have your red cells and white cells and this thing and fight and flight. It is like you are trying to safeguard your kingdom, the so-called you. But you find the so-called you really is the outer manifestation of the real you. And the real you is completely connected with the divine or the cosmic reality itself. And it's timeless. But here is being encapsulated in a cover, so it has a bit of time, has a beginning and an end, a birth and a death. So the whole issue is a reconciliation of the so-called I that begins to develop with birth and begins to move on through reason, through intellect, through reflection, through insight, until such time you find really all of those whom you called you were only the outer manifestation of the real light that was the source of your life. So you have emerged from an identity to your original reality. So it's a journey. It's a process which begins with birth and moves to another zone of beginning with death, to awakening away of the encumbrances of having to do all of the maintenance work for your mind and your hair and your teeth and your nails, all of the other things, incumbents upon, look, all of these, and you don't have enough time for it. What about the universe? What about all the zillions and the zillions of creatures? Every ant has to do the same, and it knows how to do it. And they have collective duties and responsibilities far more than personal. I haven't seen an ant going to a beauty parlor as yet, but they do it instantly. Every time you see them, suddenly they. But we have to learn by observing, witnessing, be quiet, and stop your mind, stop worries, stop panic, die. It's not a big deal, you're going to die, so die earlier. But don't do it with very inconvenient time for others. Have a bit of a respect for the others. They're celebrating their Eid or whatever. It's not very convenient. So wait, be correct. Correct meaning there are no regrets. Correct meaning there is no fear about the future and no misery or all of the other things that we have about the past. I wish I would. If only what? You are not present. The real you is ever present. So you are not present, so you fell. Good. If you don't learn from that, then you should be recycled and let them put you back. Let them put the body where it belongs, which is the earth, and your soul is ever soaring anyway with where it belongs. Perfect. So see perfection in every situation. If you don't see it, then you're called, as though you have eyes, but you don't have any sight. And if you have sight without insight, it's just as bad. Insight is insight. Until such time, you see things not just by the visible, you see them through the invisible, and you see them through intuition, and you see them from the light which is in you. And that is how you are now ready to stay in the body, look after it, care for it, say thank you very much. Yes, but don't collapse the kidneys on me, it's not good. And also leave the body, it's not a big deal. You cannot survive after a few days if you don't have good deep sleep. And that is almost the soul hovers out of the body. So why not practice it anytime? Switch off wherever you are, anytime you are. And then you will be very present. You will be all there. And you don't have any regrets. You don't have any fears. That's what everybody was. We all want the same thing. We are the same. In a different step or stage along that ladder of awakening. Every one of us is on the same passage, the same path. There's only one path towards awakening from different levels of sleep. In fact, whenever I look, thank God, I don't see many people around. Most of them are sleepwalkers. It's very dangerous. They have a clue. Our leaders don't know what they are doing. Few scientists wanted to escape their misery and so on, so they went into deep. They discovered a few silly little things, and now we become this with thousands of nuclear warheads whizzing around. Their maintenance actually is more than the entire continent of Africa annually needs to be supported. The maintenance of warheads. And here we consider now we are decent human beings. We love peace. And most of the countries have a raptor as their, bird they put it on the flag. And if you don't lift your hand on the flag, what a tragedy, what a fiasco, what absurdities. We must really laugh at the stupidity of human beings and then cry at our having fallen all of us into it at the same time. So both laugh and cry. And in other words, be neutral.
Bismillah. Bismillah, Shaykh. I hope you can hear me.
Okay. Bismillah. Bismillah.
There's a slight glitch with the video feed. Oh, there you are again.
Try, Sheikh. Who is the Prophet ﷺ? We have on the one hand this idea of a prophet in time, a man subject to the 7th century. And then we have the Ruh al-Muhammadi, we have the Nur al-Muhammadi. That prophet that says, I was created when Adam was between water and clay, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Hadith Qudsi says, were it not for you, Muhammad, I would have not created the world. We have these different registers. This light, this very first light we see as being created before humanity or any creation happened was the Nur al-Muhammadi, which is transmitted to each human life and each of the prophets. Can you speak to us?
Sadiyya, you'll have to repeat your question because I think
I got the question. I'll answer it.
You got it.
I'll answer
it. Sorry.
We are living within space and time. So there is a lead time. And this lead time is that, for example, you have got a map or a drawing or architecture or whatever drawing of a house. So you tell your child that this is my house. Where is the house? I want to live in it. Where is my bedroom? Say, oh, that will come later. So that is the meaning also of the tradition that I was a light when Adam was still in mud. There is a purpose in all of this. The Adamic blueprint is a magnificent story. Maybe if you like, we can also dwell upon that on its own, in that there was in the divine, if you like, design, so to speak, awakened, enlightened being who know that their beingness is derived entirely from the cosmic one and only being. So the rise of the Adamic consciousness, maybe 40, 50, 100,000 years ago, was the culmination of the rise in consciousness over hundreds of millions of years ago. It's not the same as hominids 2 million, 3 million years ago. Not the same at all of what it was 60, 70 million years ago. It was the dinosaur who was so incumbent by heavier and heavier and bigger and fatter that deep down in that subconscious dream was to fly. And that's why birds emerged from dinosaurs. So the same thing, when the Adamic consciousness was beginning to rise through reflectiveness upon reflectiveness, if you like, the ultimate conclusion of that was the full awareness that you are none other than the cosmic light, but transiting accepting, realizing, understanding the darkness, having to deal with your body, having to rest, having to walk, having to keep quiet, having to speak. So that was, if you like, the culmination of the Adamic story, of the Adamic cosmology. So these are metaphors. So we are all, so to speak, after that event of the light that became also a human being, awake and so on, we're all, so to speak, are Muhammadis. There's no going back. That is why there is La Nabiyya Ba'di. There is no more news after that. It's already done. Nabi is from Naba, information, news, unfathomed. There is nothing more. You are here because that which is here, there, everywhere, and yet you cannot find it specifically, separately anywhere. That's Allah. So you are in truth a divine entity, assuming certain bovine and some other related other lower animal qualities. That's all. It's in transit. It's work in progress. And it will complete as you are let out of your body and your mind into the truth of the boundlessness of your own soul. So that's all it means.
Thank you, Shaykh. My last question is on the Quran and how to read the Quran. I mean, the Quran has been described as Quran al-Kareem, and I'm, sitting quite, I'm reflecting on this word Kareem, Quran al-Kareem. The idea of the Quran as being generous, the Quran, as being a reservoir of plenitude, an ocean without shore, as has been described by some Sufis. What does it mean to engage? What does it mean for us as human beings to also engage with the Quran with a mode of generosity? There are different moments in the Quran. Some are clearly historical and some are eternal. Some have limitations. And in the community of Muslims around the world, people read the Quran from very different spaces and they derive different things from the Quran depending on their state. The Quran, as many have argued, is a mirror to your own soul. Whether you use it as a mirror towards the higher or not is something about the mode in which you read the Quran. And so perhaps the Quran is a bit like an existential puzzle. We read for transformation, because there are lower modes of reading, and we know this. So could you give us some guidance on this, please, Shaykh?
It is like coming to a source. The Quran is a link between the infinite cosmic realities and my personal individual reality in space and time. So here is a magnificent cosmic source, and here I am, a tiny little thing trying to maintain whatever I consider is important at that moment. So a lot depends on my need, my genuine need, not frivolous, and my intention. Do I want to show off that I can recite well, or I know some of the meanings, or do I want to impress, or I want to frighten them, or I want to oppress them? Or depends really what is my genuine, much subtler, deeper than subconscious even. What do I want out of it? What do you want? What does anybody want? You want not to want. You want to be so content in the moment that if a want arises, it will also show you how to overcome that need to neutralize it. Because if you have needs, if you have pain, if you have suffering, if you have hunger, if you have anger, you are not between the infinite soul and the lower human identity as you are. So we want to maintain always that neutrality so that you encompass as far as possible that consciousness. So the Quran is that. It's like going to source, going to the wellhead. And Sharia is that, from where the well flows. So it all depends on your true state and intention and attention and ability of retention. So if you are truly in abandonment to the light of lights, then it will shine upon where it is needed to be shine for you. So you are truly in 100% tawakkul. You trust in Allah's rahmah. الذي خلقني فهو يهدين. You know it will, and if your need, He will show you how that need will be satisfied. And it goes on, يهديهم بإيمانهم. The more you faith and trust, the more it will be there. And the more you are present. And the more you are present, the more you are at one with life itself, which is present. So Quran is that. It is Rahmatan al-Alameen. And it's not a preserve for any particular people or person and so on. And that is why it has to be also accepted as a universal message. But once you may say, no, it is mine, and it is according to my sect, and this is the mosque I have, so you have reduced it to a locality. It cannot be. You cannot make the sun into a tiny little lamp because you need a small lamp in your bedroom. No. The sun is a sun. And the divine light is a divine light. From it comes Nur Samawati wal Ard, including the tiny, tiny little light within me. So that's how it is.
Thank you, Shaykh. Thank you, Shaykh. That was very, very beautiful. Subhanallah. Thank you, Shaykh, for your gifts, for the beautiful wisdom that you've shared with us on this Eid day, on this Ramadan day. Every day is Eid and every day is Ramadan. Bismillah, Bismillah, Bismillah. Thank you, Shaykhna. This has been a beautiful conversation, and I am enormously grateful.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Bismillah, Bismillah, Bismillah. Bismillah, Bismillah. Go with trust. Do your best totally as though you're going to die next minute, and trust in the rest. And be joyful, joyful, joyful. Even when you are under stress, try to deal with it as best as you can and leave the rest. You're not the creator. Do your best, do your best, do your best. And be present, 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 present. And if it is Eid, exchange presents on the Eid. Salam.
Thank you so much, Shaykh Fadhlalla. Thank you so much, Dr. Sadiyya Shaikh. Thank you for your penetrating questions, so incisive and articulate, and for drawing out these amazing gems of insight and clarity from Shaykh Fadhlalla, showing us how we are all really pulsating between shadow and light and oscillating along that spectrum between the individual and the cosmic, between our individual identity and ultimate reality. What a glorious way to end Ramadan. What a glorious way to enjoy Eid. Bless you both. Thank you so much. I hope that our viewers today will subscribe to the Shaykh Fadhlalla Haeri Foundation YouTube channel so they will get updates about future events such as this. And I think we can look forward to many more, inshallah, in the near future. Bless you all. Thank you so much. Fi amanillah. Thank you to also to the team who have put this on together today. Thank you very much. Fi amanillah. Jazakumullah.
Assalamu alaikum.